Welcome to our Mr. Hilarious channel. Get ready to feel the thrill with scary stories and mysteries that will get your heart racing. Don't forget to subscribe for more horror stories. That night, the tense atmosphere began when Sarah found an old doll in the attic of her grandmother's house. It was a large doll, with long, curly, matted hair and glass eyes that reflected the dim light as if staring into the soul. Despite the goosebumps, Sarah's curiosity overcame her fear. She took the doll to her room, intending to clean it the next day. However, as the night wore on, Sarah was startled by the sound of faint footsteps from the direction of the attic. An uneasy feeling began to come over her, as she was sure she had locked the attic door before going to bed. Cautiously, she turned on the room light. Her heart skipped a beat when she realized that the doll she had previously placed on the chair had disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, a low laugh, almost a whisper, came from behind her. Sarah froze. With trembling hands, she forced herself to turn around. The sight she saw made her almost lose consciousness. The doll was now standing upright, bigger than before, with eyes that glowed a fiery red like embers. The doll's once innocent face turned sinister, flashing an inhuman smile. The doll slowly raised a finger, pointed at Sarah, and said in a cold child's voice, "Play me, or I'll take your place." The voice echoed throughout the room, making Sarah's hair stand on end. Fear enveloped her, making her realize that it was going to be the worst night of her life. Risa, a receptionist at an old hotel, has often heard spooky stories about room 405. It's famous for being the place where a guest mysteriously died years ago, and since then, many strange occurrences have been reported there. However, the hotel was full that night, and Risa had no choice but to hand over the key to room 405 to a man who had arrived late. She tried to ignore the bad feeling that came over her as he smiled and walked away to his room. As the night wore on, the phone at the reception desk rang. The male voice from room 405 sounded shaky. Someone knocked on my door, but when I opened it, there was no one. Now I hear whispers from inside the closet. The man's words made Risa's blood run cold. Despite her fear, she knew this was part of her job. Quickly, Risa called the security staff and headed for room 405. When they arrived, the door was locked from the inside. They knocked several times, but there was no answer. Finally, the door was broken down. However, what they found inside made the atmosphere even more tense. The room was empty. There was no sign of the man. There was only a bone-chilling chill and a piece of paper on the bed. With trembling hands, Risa picked up the paper. The writing on it took her breath away. "I've taken it. You're next." That night, Risa couldn't sleep. Every little sound in the hallway made her jump. She felt like she was being watched, as if something was stalking her. The next day, she heard the news that the man staying in room 405 was never registered in the hotel system. There was only a blank name and the room key, which was now lost somewhere. Room 405 was locked again, but for Risa, the shadows from that night would never go away. Andy recently felt like someone was watching him. Every time he crosses the corridor of his house, a black shadow is often glimpsed in the corner of his eye. However, when he turns his head, the shadow always disappears, leaving a sense of dread that is hard to explain. The fear began to plague Andy's mind, even though she tried to remain rational. One night, Andy decided to ignore his fear and watch television to distract himself. However, his tranquility was short-lived. The shadow reappeared in the corner of the living room, this time more vivid and moving slowly. Andy's heart was racing, but she tried to stay calm, trying to convince herself that it was just her imagination. But the uneasiness was growing. As Andy got up to turn off the lights before going to bed, she was startled by the shadow that had reappeared. This time, it stood in the corner of his room, not moving at all. Andy felt trapped by the fear that increasingly enveloped her. Slowly, the shadow began to approach, revealing a female figure with a broken face and empty eyes that stared at him sharply. No words could come out of Andy's mouth, only a deepening fear. Suddenly, the shadow whispered in a hoarse, cold voice, "I've been here a long time, Andy. You're the one who never saw me." The voice moved Andy's body, making him silent, unable to move. A gripping fear seemed to seep into him, making him realize that there was something darker and scarier than just a shadow. Something that had been stalking her in silence.